There are many things that can make or break a landscape photo. 3 elements that can be really important for your landscape photography are foreground, middle ground, and background. Hi, I'm Ray Scott, and welcome to Visual Art Photography Tutorials. There are millions of great landscape photos out there that really have nothing to do with foreground, middle ground, and background. But knowing how to use those 3 elements in your photos can really help your landscape photography. And it's a great basic way to start almost any landscape photo. You know, when you're standing there, I'm sure you've seen people do it, maybe you've done it yourself. You know, you see a really nice scene and you grab your camera, maybe put on your wide-angle lens and take a shot, and it just doesn't look the way it felt to you. Well, one of the ways to really make it work is to be very aware of what's going on in the foreground, the middle ground, and the background of your photo. So let's take a look at how we do it. Okay, if you have any questions or comments, you can address those down below, and of course you can subscribe as well. All right, here's our first landscape image for today that is going to display foreground, middle ground, and background. Now, very obvious what's going on in the foreground. Your interest is right here in front with the log, with the leaf on top of the log, and then the branch that goes across. Also, the sky reflecting in the water. So this is your foreground area. Then you go into the middle ground, which is kind of interesting because it's got this intense green in this swamp with the grasses coming up in that. And then just on the edge of the middle ground and background, you have these trees here, almost acting as 2 sentinels that usher you through the end of the middle ground into what's going on in the back, which is the background. You can tell in the background that it is autumn. Obviously in the foreground you could tell because of the leaf down here, but also in the background you have some color in the forest itself. So foreground, middle ground, background. In this shot, you have the foreground with the wave crashing on the shore. In the middle ground, the ocean here, a little bit of rolling waves, as well as these homes and a bit of a cliff. And then your background actually here is the sky. That happens often. Over here, a little more in your face. Not quite sure this could be called a landscape, but I guess it could be loosely. Here you have the foreground is these leading lines, this wharf. Your interest is here along with the lobster traps and a few other things. This barrel over here, that's your foreground, as well as this red building here. That kind of captures your eye on the side. Then your middle ground, this beautifully colored hut, this orangey red hut. That's your middle ground along with a little bit of the boat. And then the background is the village, the homes in the village. I actually used this image in a previous video called Lines and Leading Lines, because as you can see the lines lead you in and around, but that's another tutorial. But for foreground, you have the blue in the ditch here, the water reflecting what's up here, which was some bluer sky, but over here, of course, you have the gray. And then your middle ground, your homes, and the background, this beautiful cliff and a bit of fog and clouds. Here's another one that is kind of dynamic right in the front with these beautiful rocks. And these ones, these black rocks and the orange mixed in there. That's the foreground. In the middle ground, this big wave that's coming in and getting ready to crash on these rocks. And then the background is the sky. Now, interestingly enough, if this sky had been just, blue or maybe white or something like that, I don't know if you could really call that a very strong background, but because it's very dark and a little bit ominous, that's a good background. Early morning, down by the water, and all of this ice had crashed up on the shoreline. So that's your foreground. Middle ground, the ice with some water, some melting water here, and the background, of course, these trees, but also that incredibly large sun. And for our last image, again, this one is actually very well defined. Your foreground is the water, middle ground, the rock, along with the homes, and the background, the sky. And as I said at the top of the show, there are so many landscape photos that have nothing to do with foreground, middle ground, and background, or they maybe only have one or two of the elements in it, and they can be terrific. But it's a good way to start. It's a good basic start to your landscape photography workflow. Look for it next time you're out and see what you can do with it. So I hope that helped your landscape photography workflow. Until next time, I'm Ray Scott, reminding you that it's not what you see, it's how you see it. And I'll see you soon.